They want me to come in front of an audience in the studio, but also 40 million people and play a song. I'm happy to say I was able to go out and play. I also did some talking with the host and cracked a joke or two or something like that. So a little smart aleck, you know. But it was a great time and a great experience for me. And here's the other thing about the experience for me as well. Part of the reason that I was so shy and I didn't talk with very many people was because I didn't talk very much, you know, so people didn't have anything to talk with me about. However, when I appear on the television show, then people thought, oh, this man is famous. So then people would come up to me in school and talk to me about things. And so harmonica, I always say, harmonica saved my life. I don't know where I would be. I don't know even if I would be here now if it weren't for the harmonica, because it gave me confidence. It allowed me to express myself, and I love the harmonica dearly and love any kind of music on the harmonica. I played not only blues, but a little bluegrass, a little pop music, a little jazz, a little, you know, different kinds of things, because the harmonica is such an expressive instrument, you know. But I was also around this time becoming very interested in the blues as well, and many people had written books about the blues in Mississippi and Chicago and New Orleans and all these different places, and I said, you know, I wonder if they had any blues in Cincinnati many years ago before I was alive, you know. So I began to do some research in Cincinnati, and this is when I wrote one of my books. Is called Going to Cincinnati, A History of the Blues in the Queen City, which comes out from the University of Illinois Press. And it's about all the people who played in the 1920s and 30s, 40s, 50s, all the way up into the 1970s. And it made me familiar with the heritage of blues in Cincinnati. It made me familiar with other people who were playing in the city. And I began playing with many musicians, mostly African American musicians. Those were the people who were mostly playing the blues when I started to play in the late 60s and early 1970s. And so I was lucky enough to be able to play with some great, masterful musicians. A man named Albert Washington, I used to play with him every weekend. A man named Big Joe Duskin, who was just a great boogie-woogie piano player. If you're familiar with the piano players like Albert Ammons and Pete Johnson and Meadlux Lewis and Big Maceo and people like that, Joe used to play all that kind of stuff, you know. So it was a pleasure for me to be able to work with Albert and Joe. There was a guy who called himself H-Bomb Ferguson. And he got the nickname of H-Bomb because they said his voice was so loud. It was like an H-bomb going off. So I don't know if that's good or not, you know. But anyway, H-Bomb Ferguson and all these very, very colorful characters who influenced the way I played the harmonica, because I was learning how to play. And then, you know, everybody, when they start out, they imitate somebody else. You know, it might be, and the first person who I loved to listen to play the harmonica in the blues was Sonny Boy Williamson, the first Sonny Boy Williamson, because it was, you know, there were two of them, and I listened to the first Sonny Boy Williamson, and I loved the way he used to play, because he would play chords and the notes at the same time, and he had lots of wind. People tell me I have lots of wind too. Sometimes this is not a good thing, but lots of wind, and so I started off by listening a lot to Sonny Boy Williamson and playing the kinds of things he liked to play. And then I began to say, you know, the blues is not really about imitating somebody else's style. The most important thing about the blues is to try to sound like yourself and to help people hear your ideas and the way you can express them as opposed to the way somebody else can express them. You know, so I started looking around for other sounds, and at that point, you know, I started listening to saxophone players like Ben Webster. Are you familiar with Ben Webster? He has a really big vibrato when he plays, and I've always been admired the saxophone players who have a wide vibrato, because it's a way of seeming like you're doing a lot when you're not really. You're not playing a lot of notes or anything like that. You play one note, but if you play the vibrato on it, you just hold the note like this. But if you put the vibrato on it, it's an extension of your voice. So my voice should be coming through this harmonica and determine what the harmonica sounds like. So I make it shake like a vibrato. So it sounds like more is happening than actually is. I'm just playing one note, but I make my Adam's apple, they call Adam's apple, shake up and down when I play. So I started listening to all different kinds of African American music, but also, as I said, bluegrass music and country music, and I love all those kinds of things. And I came to a musician named Albert Ayler, and Albert Ayler played avant-garde jazz, so really kind of what they call out jazz in the 1960s and the 1970s. And he had, I was saying earlier, he had a vibrato that was so wide, you could drive a truck through it. Really big, I thought that's what I would want my harmonica to sound like that. And I began to try to think about how I could play different kinds of runs and different kinds of things on a harmonica that would be based on vibrato instead of being based on a melody or some kind of melodic playing. So that sometimes I try to make my playing like an abstract expressionist might do a painting. It's rather than being some kind of logical progression of ideas or something like that, I try just to make a sound that makes you feel a certain way. With the shaking and the vibrato and everything. I did a song called "The Blues Ain't in No Bottle," which has never been released actually. We did a CD that came out in the Netherlands later on when I started playing with the band. But then right before I got my job teaching at the University of Massachusetts, we did another session. However, because I was leaving right away, the recordings were never released. So we have a whole CD's worth of recordings that have been mastered and are all ready to go, but we never released them. And one of them was based around this idea that I was trying to develop, that you don't have to play a kind of melodic progression or something like that, but just try to get a feeling through the use of vibrato on certain kinds of notes and make those notes kind of blend together too. We'll demonstrate some of those kind of things later on when I talk about it. Maybe it'll be clearer. But so then once I became known a little better as a harmonica player, then I met other people who, as I said, in the African American community, who I played with, and then also some other people who were closer to my age at that time, and we got together and formed a unit that we backed up various blues musicians in the city, and also we used to open up for the blues musicians who used to tour around and come into Cincinnati. I'm very proud to say that I was able to open up for people like Muddy Waters about 7 or 8 times, for B.B. King about 7 or 8 times, Albert King, James Cotton, Dr. John, if you're familiar with Dr. John and I Tripper, and people like all the blues bands that used to come through Cincinnati. It was great to be able to meet with them and talk with them, and they were very encouraging to me as a young musician who was just trying to kind of start out, and I'd be sitting with them for a while. Also, one of my biggest thrills was in Cincinnati, in a club that was about this big, about as big as this club here. T-Bone Walker came into town, and T-Bone Walker was just one of the great guitar players of all time. And so I went to the club to see him, and somebody told him I was a harmonica player, and he invited me to come up and play with him. And it was such a thrill to play with T-Bone. And after we were finished, after the set was over, he came down to me and he said, will you stick around for the next set? I would like for you to come back up again. That was the biggest compliment I could have ever gotten from anybody, to have T-Bone Walker invite me to come back up too. So that's the way that the music community should be. You know, we should all share with each other and encourage each other and play with each other and recognize, you know, each other's talents and try to help each other, you know, learn to play what we're doing, because that's really what the world is all about anyway. You know, anything in the world is all about is trying to help other people to do what it is that they would like to do. So being able to play with Muddy Waters and B.B. King and all these various people. Also, there was a blues group back in the 60s was very popular called Canned Heat. And they were one of my favorite groups, one of the first groups that I listened to, and they would always, and this is what I've always tried to do as well, when they put out an LP or a CD, then in the liner notes, they would mention all the people who inspired them. So this is where I first heard about Muddy Waters and Robert Johnson and Big Bill Broonzy and all these people. And so I always thought, if I ever do anything like that, I always want to mention the people who were the originators, or the people who passed along their knowledge of the blues to other people who came after them, because I would like for them to get the recognition that they deserve, because as we know in American history, African Americans have really been discriminated against in our culture, and as a result of that have never really quite received the attention that they deserve to get for the geniuses that many of the musicians were in creating so many different kinds of music. Because when you think about it, you know, so when African Americans come here, they bring African music with them and they blend it with European music, and so you get all these different genres of spirituals, of game songs, of ragtime, of blues, of jazz, and a different kind of blues, and another different kind of blues, and another different kind of blues, and another different kind of jazz, and another different kind of jazz, there's so much creativity, you know, in the African American community to create all these different kinds of musics. Every time somebody else would begin to pick up a style, create a new one, you know. And this is why I say I think that creativity and generating your own style is the most important thing about the blues. So a few years ago, there was an album came out. I can't remember what the name of it was. Maybe one of you will remember what it was. It was an album by Eric Clapton, which he did covers of songs by Elmore James and B.B. King and Big Bill Broonzy and Robert Johnson and other people. I think it was called Blues, maybe. It was just Blues or something like that. But he was trying to play exactly like Elmore James. And I said, this doesn't make any sense. Because if I want to hear Elmore James, he said, I will listen to Elmore James. Nobody will ever sound like Elmore James. Who has that voice? You know, who plays guitar like that but Elmore James? You know, plus he also is the originator of that kind of playing. So I always thought, you know, what Eric Clapton should do is concentrate on sounding like Eric Clapton. You know, people should concentrate on sounding like themselves, because that's most important about blues and jazz and playing these kinds of things.